Hello everyone! In this video we'll be discussing the question, where do babies come from? That question can cause parents to cringe with dread. Should I just tell my kiddo it's the storks and deal with it later? Maybe we should leave it for the teacher in health class to discuss. As tempting as these options might sound, parents are their kids' primary sex educators. Providing shame-free, age-appropriate, and factual information is super important for our kids to have healthy sexual bodies and lives. Therefore, to help you through this conversation, we've prepared a little video with tips for how to talk about pregnancy and sex with your young person. Feel free to watch it by yourself or with your kid, but we encourage you to begin these conversations early. Research shows that kids as young as 11 years old can be exposed unintentionally to pornography and other sexually explicit images, so have these talks early and often. A 2016 survey showed that 52% of teens ages 12 to 15 stated that parents most influence their sexual decision-making. Our kids want to hear it from us. First off, let's review a little bit about sex and pregnancy for ourselves. Be sure to check out our anatomy video on our parent info page for a review of body parts terminology. So how does pregnancy work? It can actually happen a couple of different ways. The most common way is through sexual intercourse, or when someone who has a penis inserts their penis into someone's vagina and ejaculates, or releases sperm. Let's break that down a little bit before moving on. Getting pregnant requires two other processes: ejaculation and menstruation. Ejaculation is the process for a person with a penis in which sperm exits the body. Sperm is created and stored in the testicles. When a person with a penis gets aroused or turned on sexually, blood flows to the penis to make it hard and erect, or standing up. If the person gets aroused enough, sperm will then travel from the testicles through the vas deferens and urethra, mixing with semen, the sticky fluid that holds the sperm, until the semen leaves the tip of the penis. This is called ejaculation. The process of menstruation is also required for pregnancy. People with a vulva who have not started ovulating or releasing eggs from their ovaries cannot get pregnant. Folks with ovaries are born with all the eggs they will ever have. During ovulation, an egg or two is released from the ovary and travels down the fallopian tube. It can either meet with a sperm to be fertilized, which we'll describe momentarily, or it can continue traveling to the uterus, where the lining of the uterus sheds, and the egg and the lining leave the vagina in the form of menstrual blood. This happens once per month and is commonly called getting your period. So, back to sexual intercourse. After an erect penis ejaculates sperm into the vagina and an egg or two has left the ovary and is traveling down the fallopian tube, the egg can accept a single sperm in order to start a pregnancy. This is called fertilization. The fertilized egg then travels to the uterus and implants in the thickening uterine wall, where it develops over 9 months into a baby. Babies don't always come into the world through sexual intercourse. They can also come from in vitro fertilization, when the egg is fertilized outside the body and then implanted into the uterus, or artificial insemination, when sperm is manually inserted into the uterus during ovulation. Both are ways someone can become pregnant as well. Remember also that when answering the question of where babies come from, you shouldn't forget adoption. This is another way in which babies come into a family. So now that we're on the same page about the processes involved for pregnancy, what could the conversation with your young person look like? Let's roleplay with Andre, who is 9 years old. Remember to focus on what your child is actually asking. Answer factually and simply. Andre asks, "Where do babies come from?" As parents, you can respond, "Well, babies come into the world a lot of different ways. Do you remember that we talked about how some people have a penis and some people have a vulva? Well, when they feel old enough and ready, a person with a penis and a person with a vagina can create a baby by inserting their penis into the other person's vagina. This is called having sex, and it's one way to make a baby. Now, do you remember where the uterus is? A baby can develop inside the uterus of the person with a vulva after they have sex, and after 9 months, the baby will be pushed out of the person's vagina and into the world. Sometimes people can't have babies this way because their bodies won't let them, but they talk to their doctors about other ways to do it. And some families have babies through adoption. Do you know what adoption is? This explanation of sex might totally gross your kid out, or have them asking a ton of other questions. Answer calmly and factually based on what you know. Another related or follow-up question to this conversation could be, so what's sex? We'll give you some tips on this chat too, with 9-year-old Andre. As a parent, you can say, sex has a lot of different meanings. It's a word to describe our bodies, like male, female, or intersex, which is when people have ambiguous genitalia. It also describes when people want to feel good in their bodies and be close to others. Adults call this having sex. It also means having a baby, which is a big responsibility. As your kiddo gets older, feel free to share anatomy diagrams and this video so they can learn more about the other processes involved. A more in-depth conversation is especially important to have right before or around the time of puberty, when ejaculations and menstruation begin happening to your kids. Feel out when may be a good time to also discuss your young person's goals and how they relate to sex and pregnancy. We'll have another video coming out soon about safe sex, so stay tuned. Remember that there's nothing wrong or awkward about our body's natural processes. Kids deserve to know how their bodies work, and as parents, you can provide factual information to answer their questions and promote their healthy, positive sexuality.